Alrighty, let's get this show on the road.
Mhm.
So, you are a more recent runner to this game, right? I think you picked it up in 2020 or so.
Yep. I started playing Ty the Tasmanian Tiger on January 7th, 2020.
I see. What drew you to the game at that point?
For me, it was a little bit of a funny way as to how I got into the game. So essentially, I had the game introduced to me from another streaming friend of mine, Lil Trouble. She started playing the game in 2018, roughly, and I got to see the speed run, and I also got to meet Bruh because he was getting involved in a few Age of Empires chats and stuff at that point.
Mhm.
And from there, I'd actually thought, man, this game, it brings so much childhood back and everything like that, but I don't see any mechanics. And at that point, ground swimming didn't exist. So I looked at the game and actually passed over it for a few years
Mhm.
because I just didn't see something that was truly captivating for me. So fast forward a few years, that same friend, Little Trouble, me, and another friend of hers, we decided to just do a meme race of the game. And it took me something like 2 hours to get to Bridge over the River Ty. But at that point, I was like, you know what? Let's just look at the speedrun again. So booted up speedrun.com,
Mhm.
found Karma Crimson's 32:42, I believe it was. And that was like 20 minutes faster than the previous world record I'd seen. So I was just like, what happened? So I opened up the video and I saw the incredible thing that is ground swimming, which later on I would find was found by a good friend of mine now, Brandorn.
Mhm.
But essentially, ground swimming just completely revolutionized the game for me and completely gave me that spark where I was like, yeah, I want to run this. I want to master this and I want to try and become the best that I can with this. And at first, it was like, okay, I'm able to get a 15-minute run or something like that. So I think on the first day that I did my first run, it was like just barely under an hour or something like that. Like I was celebrating. It's like, yeah, I got second to last on the leaderboard, that kind of thing. The leaderboard
Yep.
was pretty dead at the time as well. Cause the thing is, like the any percent version, we didn't understand it very well at that point in time. And we were having to deal with a lot of crashes.
Mhm.
But eventually we did figure out how to work around those crashes. We figured out how to minimize all of those crashes. So it actually became quite reasonable to run. All of those kind of pain points and things for us just started to disappear over time. And it was just purely enjoying and improving at the game.
Hang on one second. Writing notes from what you just said.
Mhm.
Okay.
There's also another part as well that's fairly core to me really getting into the game as well.
What's that?
There's also another part that's fairly core towards me getting into the game actually as well,
No,
which I need
I
to
heard
mention.
what you said, but what is the
Okay.
thing?
Right. Okay, so another thing as well that really cemented my love for speedrunning the game was shortly after I'd started running, Bruh really brought me in under his wing. He taught me all of the basics of how to play the game, what settings and everything to use. And after seeing my improvement, he eventually invited me to something called Thai Tuesday. Now, Thai Tuesday for me was incredible because it meant that I got to meet all of these other people sharing and enjoying the speedrun, this game that I played when I was a child, and now getting to bring it almost into this like, multiplayer shared collaborative experience where we're all racing and playing the game with each other. It was
Mhm.
just so much fun and every single week I was just driven to after every race, I would just sit down and I would practice for hours and hours and hours and just try and master everything that I could so that the next week I'd be able to smash my PB by a few minutes every single week. So at the start of those races, I was joking with Quick Nelson. We were talking about like who's going to be commentating the race and stuff like that. We were just memeing along in the back or whatever, finishing like 10 or 20 minutes after the first guys. But then eventually it's like I started to progress through. I eventually beat Nelson and then eventually I caught up with bruh, and then I think it was probably after like 1.5 months, 2 months or something like that, I properly passed bruh, and I was pretty much like nipping right at Coral's feet right there. And yeah, that kind of had me really going with my first sense of competition for speedrunning. And
Mhm.
shortly after that, the Thai Tuesdays, they stopped happening. We weren't doing those races anymore, but I was still driven. I still wanted to beat Coral, and I still wanted to try and close the gap with Karma. So eventually, I managed to beat Coral. There's also a great emote that we use in the Thai Discord server called Thai Chomp. That emote is actually
Okay.
based off of me failing the turkey mini game and having Thai just like turn around, do a 180 and do like a bite towards the camera to attack an enemy instead of finishing the turkey, which lost like 20 seconds. But I think that was actually the first run that I managed to get second place on the leaderboard.
Nice.
So from there, after those Thai Tuesday races, that had me like well over a minute away from Karma still, but it had really given me that sense of competition and that drive to improve. And from there, I was just looking for more and more things that I could do to improve. And something that had been instilled in me from bruh when he was first teaching me the game. I got to see him doing the entire walk in the park reroute using ground swimming. Now, the slide 2 skip had already been found, but essentially bruh added in all of these ground swims. Like there's like 2 or 3 ground swims that he added in that are like these really nice mechanical sections of variety that just make running walk in the park just really fun and enjoyable so long as you don't get ground scammed. But yeah, he just rerouted the section and a level, and it's like I was mind blown. It's like, hold up. So you're saying what was a world record yesterday is now 15 seconds out of date.
Mhm.
And that kind of just clicked for me. And it's like, glitch hunting is dope.
Yeah.
Routing is dope. Like, you can have just as much fun improving the game as you can playing the game. So I didn't really act on that so much initially because I didn't have too much experience. I wasn't able to time things out. Um, I went and bit into lots and lots of corners and did lots of jumps and dives and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just such a fun period to be learning the game and starting to figure out, what are some things that we could do better? And that led me to doing more and more stuff with Brandorn and looking for more and more time saves. And that's honestly been one of the most rewarding parts of running the game for me.
Awesome, dude. I love to hear that. There was a couple of things we kind of went on a long tangent there, and I wanted
Yeah.
to loop back to a few of those things.
No worries.
You had said that back when you first looked at it, I think it was that the PC version was crashing a lot,
Mhm.
right? Can you talk
Right.
to me a little bit about that?
Okay. So there's there's kind of like 3 phases for the PC version. There's when the game was first released back in 2017, right when like all of the new run like right when all of the game was basically transitioning from old console. There was a lot of crashes all over the place
Mhm.
back for that. So that kind of like stifled some of that early activity. That was like back in the era of like KF Napa, and you've got Kaifol, all of those guys, Bra as well. I think a little bit, not too sure on Bra there. But then you've kind of got this middle PC period where the game has this really good patch, which we used to call the speedrun patch. However, now we call it the 51 TE patch because lots of people trying to run any percent with ground swimming try to use this old patch, which doesn't have ground swimming.
Oh.
Um, yeah, I had to get that one renamed. I think we've had like 50 questions in the Discord for that one.
Mhm.
Um, but essentially, this like middle patch or whatever had really fast loading times. Like you would save like over 20 seconds RTA on those loading times alone. Also the saving times as well. And then there was basically no crashes. Like you would maybe get a crash like maybe every 20 hours of playing the game or something like that. Like,
Mhm.
basically inconsequential. Like, sure, you might lose one random thing here and there, but generally isn't going to affect your day to day running. Whereas the any percent patch, which is the patch that adds in ground swimming, um, I'll just explain a little bit of what changed there.
Mhm.
So on Bridge over the River Ty, there's this box that is being checked for, and like how high above it you are and stuff, and
Mhm.
whether it's like triggering whether you do a bite and then you like bonk your head into the ground, or you do a diving animation and then like go into the water and then break the box. Basically, in some ways, like you were sometimes getting the diving animation and you would like also kind of bonk onto the ground and stuff like that, or you would just do a bite onto it. So essentially, Chrome decided, yeah, okay, this has kind of been an annoying thing for casual players over the last decade or so. Let's actually get this fixed. So when they fixed it, they adjusted how some of the different checks and stuff like that were done. And they just happened to remove the check that basically once you hit the ground, if you're in water, it's like, okay, nah, it's fine. But there was no checks afterwards, we believe, that tell the game, hold up, you're not still in water. You should maybe take the player out of a swim. So that made
Mhm.
ground swimming possible, and that's what added in the ground swimming mechanic essentially, is because you could swim away from these spots or whatever. You wouldn't just bonk your head into the ground or whatever, because you'd be able to hit the ground, be in your dive, and then the game wouldn't be like, oh, you shouldn't be out of your swimming animation or whatever. And you're allowed to just swim everywhere. You move faster and you're able to go up walls vertically, basically.
Mhm.
Um, you can kind of fly as well if there's like water underneath you that's shallow enough where the game's like, yeah, there's water here, you're fine, that kind of thing. And yeah, it just made that mechanic possible. But coming back to the instability on the like ground swimming patch, that instability comes from a memory leak in the game, unfortunately. So every time that you load into a level, just a little bit of memory is leaked every single time. And because Ty was made in 2002, I believe the game is a 32-bit game. So it's only
Mhm.
got 2 gigabytes of memory that is able to be allocated to it. So if you exceed that 32-bit limit, which is 2 gigabytes, you exceed that limit, then your game just instantly crashes. So if you load into too many levels, your game will just crash. So Tinsel, bless his soul, currently has fifth place on the leaderboard, had fourth place for a really long time. I taught him the game. He's the only Australian runner that we have that is sort of active at the moment.
Mhm.
He figured out that the game had that memory leak, and pretty much ever since that day, we've been able to run so much more reliably because we know, hey, if we restart every like 20 to 30 times that we have to reset,
Mhm.
we're never going to run into these loading crashes, which is the result of like over 90% of our crashes. So just finding that removes so much pain and hassle of running the latest version for us.
Nice. Glad y'all found a solution for that because that's gotta be frustrating.
Mhm. Yeah, I think at its worst, I think I lost something like 15 world record runs in a single day due to crashes.
Wow. I guess my question is, so you would run and then it crashed and then you would just relaunch it? Or like how I guess my question is, how did you have that many crashes if you have to go through a certain number of levels first?
So
Is it just you would do a
basically,
run and then you would restart the run and then it would crash? Or go ahead.
it's like when you're speedrunning Thai, you're allowed to do like 20 or 30 resets or whatever, like 20 or 30 loads, we'll say. And
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, I should restart the game so that it doesn't crash. So for me, I actually run with Task Manager on the side and I go, okay, if the game has over 1 gigabyte of RAM being used, I have to restart my game because essentially, like, that RAM is just slowly creeping up every single time that you restart the game. And once you've done that too many times, once you've gone through enough loads, it's like, okay, going through an entire any percent run is going to increase that number by around 700 megabytes. So I
Mm.
need to give myself a little bit of headroom so that I don't exceed it when I'm at like final battle. It's like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
10 seconds ahead of world record and loading into the final battle and crash. that's happened to us a lot. It would typically happen a lot during like Hub 2 and stuff like that.
Man.
The nasty nature of that crash was that because it was happening on loads and stuff like that, and because, you would get 1/3 of your crashing progress during the duration of an entire run, quite often these crashes would happen in the middle to the late game. So it was
Mm.
really rough in that sense. It wasn't like a crash where it's like, "Oh, I lost like 2 minutes." It was a crash where it's like, "I'm on world record pace,
Yeah,
and my
like
game just
25
stopped."
minutes in.
And if your game crashes at the end, like if it crashes on the loading screen for final battle, you actually have to redo Cast Crest entirely. So it actually costs you about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes if you crash at the end of crash at the end of Cast Crest.
Man.
Because it's like this entire gauntlet level that you need to run through, and there's no portal to take you to the ending part of it.
I see. Okay. Now, roughly when was it that this crash, like resetting, would fix that problem? When was that found roughly?
Um, Let me just check my conversations with Tinsel. Because I know that I sent him like a whole bunch of like crash logs and stuff like that, and we were looking into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I found the exact message here. So I'll send you a link for that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in the Thai speedrunning Discord, by the way?
I don't think so.
No, you're not.
Would
That's a
shoot me a
message
quick
link.
inv. Yeah.
Yeah. Copy link. Okay, I think this is on. Yeah, there we go.
Og.
So yeah, in the modding channel there, basically Tinsel posted a graph being like, "Hey, do we know about this?" And it's just a graph of the memory usage for the game going up every time that he loads into a level.
Hi. Sorry. Something Discord crashed. I don't really understand what happened.
That's been happening some. Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one.
Okay, hang
But
on. Let
yeah,
me click this link.
essentially, Tinsel posted a thing like we were just hanging out in VC and stuff, and he'd attached different debugging tools and stuff to the game and was able to see, oh, the memory usage in the game is going up every time that I'm loading into a level. So it was putting that together and figuring out, oh, that's causing the crashes, and being able to see when that trips over to 2 GB that boom, it just crashes that. So it was actually quite a bit later on, but it's made running the game just so much more enjoyable over the last few months.
Mhm. I was going to say that's very recent. That's
Yeah, fairly
end of
recent.
November. That was literally 3 months ago or 4 months
Mhm.
ago, I guess. But
Yeah, it was shortly before Doomskip though, and just for reference, I think since Doomskip came out, I think I've done like 1/3 of my runs, something like that, like around 1,000 attempts or so, and then I think Karma has done like 5,000-6,000 attempts in that time.
Jesus Christ, y'all are
So
insane.
basically, it's like, that period of being like, okay, now we don't need to put up with that frustration. Let's go ham.
Hmm.
It's like suddenly we've had this like speed bump just removed for us basically when it comes to grinding the game, just making it so much more enjoyable, so much less anxiety, and like whether, you're about to have something that you've been working for months towards, you know, the anxiety of going like, is this just going to disappear, to it's down to me, do I make a mistake or not?
Hmm. Okay,
All right.
I
So
guess.
some
Go
of the
ahead.
other things that you were wanting to talk about as well. Let's see. PC port, gate skip. Are you wanting to talk more on gate skip? I
Yes,
don't
I
think
was
I
actually
mentioned.
gonna. I was gonna jump into that. So I know we talked about ground swimming a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so the way you described it, then you wouldn't have been around when gate skip was found.
No. I
Okay.
came to the game like 6 or 7 months after gate skip was found, and
Gotcha.
the game literally was just completely off of my radar at the time. I had no idea that this revolution in the game had happened for me.
Mhm.
Um, Interestingly, there's actually 2 ways that gate skip can be done. One of them is by repeatedly throwing doomerangs and getting a frame perfect jump. However, you don't unlock the doomerang in the PC version until you've beaten the final battle. The final battle. So it's not actually relevant in any percent or 51T or anything like that. Well,
Mhm.
51T is no ground swim. Um, that Doom skip version, though, you could actually use it, like the Doom jumping, you could actually use that on cheat percent technically, because you're able to do the Techno Rang cheat codes, which gives you the Doom Rang, which would allow you to do that. However, the much better version, actually, no, sorry, cheat percent has Zappy Rang anyways. What am I talking about? That's faster. The actual intended way to open the gate.
Yeah, you would think so.
Mhm. Anyways, so for gate skip though, that was a skip that was found by Coral Killer, and simply put, this skip saves like over 15 minutes. It's
Mhm.
insane. Like you're literally talking like 1/3 of the game basically. Um these days for 51TE, we're like looking at the kind of like 45 to 47-minute mark at the moment. We haven't
Mhm.
pushed it down super hard yet. We've had most of our focus on any percent for the last while. But yeah, just gate skip is a really nice trick because if you look at other games like Super Mario 64, for example, you get all of these people that are like BLJs are the worst thing ever. Like
Mhm.
the number of runs that you see getting up to BLJs, and then you just see people's hearts sinking because they don't get the first staircase, they don't get the second staircase, they don't get the third staircase, and then suddenly their PB chances have just gone down the drain.
Mhm.
So for Ty, the closest thing that you can get to a failed staircase is you do a dive and you get sent back into the water a little bit, or you get a ground scam where you do a dive and then like your head hits the ground or whatever, and you just reattempt in like 1 or 2 seconds. And if you're doing it well, you should be able to get the dive virtually first, second, or third time every single time. So
Mhm.
you're never going to waste more than 4 seconds really on your gate skip, even if it goes terribly. So it just means that, that one fundamental skip that is needed for the game is not something that feels RNG in any capacity. It is something that is completely learnable, can be made pretty much completely consistent,
Mhm.
feels ground scams. That's just like a 10 or 20% chance that it's like sometimes it memes you, but you pick yourself up and you just yeet yourself from the tree, get over the gate, and Bob's your uncle. You're happy. You've got to run, and you're into the end game, and you've only got one significant skip left for the rest of the game. Well, 2 significant skips left for the rest of the game at that point. So,
Mhm.
like at that kind of ending portion, it's kind of like you've got that building anticipation of like, am I going to make any mistakes or whatever? It's like you have cast pass or whatever. Once you've got them through that swim, literally, there's only like 3 things that are on my mind for the end of a run. And that is, am I going to be able to hit the first button on Shadow? Because if
Mhm.
you miss the boomerangs there, you can lose a few seconds. And then, am I going to? Oh, okay. One other thing as well on Final Battle. Um, you can get a proxy off of the turrets, which when I've been messing around, I have accidentally proxied off the side of the giant mech robot in the final battle, and we play on hardcore. So that actually ends your run.
Oh, that's not good.
Um, as long as you bite them from far enough back, though, proxies are never really going to happen. I've only been proxied off of the side of the robot once, and that was just when I was messing around.
Mhm.
Um, and then the wire section, it's quite easy to miss like 1 or 2 boomerangs and lose a few seconds there. And then finally, you've got Doom Skip, which is literally the skip that is saving 60 seconds at the very last moment of the run. Like the run can legitimately die like 1 to 2 seconds before the end because of Doom Skip. And
Mhm.
we actually had a almost like a 20 to 30 second world record jump by Karma. He had like this insane run. It was like low 29:40 pace. It was almost 29:30 pace. And he got inside of the pipe and just didn't quite clip the ending trigger. And it's just like you're left inside of this pipe with your camera stuck outside of the pipe and like sometimes clipping in and stuff. And it's just like you're panicking. The Doomerang is like doing loop de loops and donuts and everything. And you're like, no, I want to get back to this trigger. But then sometimes your Boomerang just hits the side of the pipe and your run is dead. It loses over 30 seconds, and that is more time than we lose for the entire run. So you really need to get Doom Skip on your first try. It's just like, in terms of precision on it as well, the precision to get Doom Skip, it's like you need to aim into this thing that, how do I put it? The equivalent would be like, imagine like a remote controlled frisbee that you're trying to throw into a gap that is like 3 times as tall as the frisbee, maybe twice as tall as the frisbee. It's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a weird analogy, but you're just trying to get it through this little gap. And once you get in, then you just need to make sure that you angle into the ending trigger properly. But yeah, like, it's stressful. It's a little bit stressful at the end of runs. I think I've only lost 1 PB due to Doom Skip so far. Karma's also had that world record that he missed, so I think we're at 1 apiece there at the moment. But in terms of overall consistency, like, once you've gotten it properly practiced and all of it down and everything like that, we've got it well above 90% consistency. It's just like, that little asterisk at the end of being like, you haven't got it until you've got it,
I had a question and then I forgot what it was.
Mhm.
I really got to start writing stuff down.
Yeah, that was kind of like a whole commentary on the end game section there.
Yes. Do you guys highlight that when that happens? Do you guys highlight like make a Twitch highlight or just someone make a Twitch clip for that kind of thing?
Not always.
I'm just
Not
curious if
always.
anyone has, because I think that'd be really cool, or not
Mhm.
cool, but really good to show in the video of like it's dangerous and sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
or like a
possible.
Karma's going for the run and oh no, it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Heartbreak, sad music.
Yeah, I think that was actually within the last 2 weeks. So
Oh,
the VOD should actually still just exist.
I will reach out to it was Karma, right?
Yeah, Karma Crimson, but it's literally going to be within the next few days that VOD would expire, I would imagine.
I'll DM him today. This is a random offshoot of a question that I had earlier, but I forgot to ask it. Is Ty your first speed game?
Kind of. So
Interesting.
basically, like, I first wanted to get into speedrunning in around 2013, 2014.
Mhm.
And, I was watching Sefbling at the time, and he was running Super Mario World, I believe it was. And this was before credit warp and everything was found for the game. And basically, I was like, yo, I want to speedrun this. I'm going to set up an emulator and stuff. And, well, let's just say that some ads randomly started appearing on my computer, and I never pursued speedrunning for about another decade after that.
Did you get some sort of viruses or something? I don't understand.
Just some random ads started appearing on my computer. But yeah, nevertheless, though, didn't do anything else with speedrunning there. And improved my computer literacy at the same time.
I see.
But yeah,
all right.
From that though, eventually, like, decided that I wasn't really interested in running that. I toyed a little bit with speedrunning Minecraft because that was a game that I really enjoyed a lot, but the RNG for it just always it was too much for me.
Yeah.
It's just
I
like,
love Minecraft, but that Minecraft speedruns just seem really
mm,
weird to me. I just
yeah,
don't get it.
I can get down for some filtered seed, and like if there was some like normalized RNG or something like that. But as it is, as it stands now, it's like immensely impressive to watch and like really cool to see. But it's like something that I just don't personally enjoy running myself.
Mm.
So after experimenting with that and being like, yeah, this isn't really something that I vibe with, I was like, okay, I want to find something that I can just improve at and, enjoy it. And, a few years after I'd tried Minecraft or whatever, I was like, let's look at Ty. And then we kind of went over that. But essentially, it's
Yeah.
like, I wasn't too impressed with the mechanics of the game initially, but then ground swimming became a thing. And then suddenly I was all on board. And the rest is history.
There you go. All right, we're looping back around still.
Hmm.
You talked about Tie Tuesday.
Hmm.
Two things. Roughly, when did this happen? Like, when did you first start doing Tie Tuesday, and then when did it stop? And also, what were some of the names of the people that were there?
Yeah. So I think Thai Tuesday, they would have started somewhere around like mid to late January. And they went all the way up until like mid March, I think. Something like that. There was like,
2021.
yeah, all in 2021.
Okay.
There was a good like 6 or 7 weeks that we were doing these basically. And
Okay.
that entire time period was basically the Lawrence training arc.
Hmm.
And went from being like, near the bottom of the leaderboard to basically I was like fighting with the top few runners at that point.
Okay. The runners at that point, I think you had mentioned Bruh
Yeah.
was there.
There was Bruh,
Coral.
Quick Nelson, Coral, Karma Crimson, and myself. Occasionally, I think we had Rob the Gamer. He would jump on call occasionally. I think he only did that once or something.
Mhm.
Um, but like none of the like original runners or anything like that were really active at that point. It was kind of only really that like new group of people. We'd
Mhm.
have Brandorn being in chat and stuff like that for people. So like, some of the people that we do stuff with these days, they were getting involved back in then. And, that was kind of like also marking those points of when we were really looking to improve the game and stuff as well. Like, I think there was something like 3 or 4 world records that actually happened during Thai Tuesday. Kama said like 3 or 4 world records at the time.
Mhm.
So, you know, it was at that point where it's like you could do 5 no reset runs in a day and you could get 2 world records. Like I think Kama actually double world recorded on 1 or 2 of the Thai Tuesdays.
Man. Yeah, I think there's definitely certain times in certain games when it's just like, oh yeah, we're just getting better.
Mhm,
Nothing's really changing. We're all just better. We're all
mhm.
improving. That's
It's
cool.
kind of crazy though, because over the last year and a bit, if you look at the time save that has come from player improvement versus strategy improvement,
Hmm.
for the first time in a very, very long time, strategy improvement actually outdid the players, which is insane. So
That is
that's
pretty crazy.
like obviously like there was a ton of work and stuff done by the players. Like I think this last year was the most improvement that the game had seen in multiple years on a gameplay front, but it was also like the amount of time save that we found. It was more than the last 7 years combined basically in the
Wow.
last year. So I think let me just add things up a little bit. I think there was something like 2.5 minutes of time save that was found for any percent in the last year. And so if you take the 32, 42, and you remove 2.5 minutes off of that, that gets you down to 30 minutes or so. And
Hmm.
then you remove the rest of that, and that pretty much brings you to like the actual player improvement there. So I would say like you get down to like 30-10 or whatever for like the actual quality of gameplay. And then you look at Kama's world record now, 28:50. So at least like a minute 10, minute 20 of actual player improvement there. And a minute 20 in a year, that's a very big jump.
That is big.
But like just the amount of times that the game actually just changed for strategies. Like, there was actually a point in time where it's like, do I even bother doing any runs? Because it's like, well, we're just going to find something else that's going to find time
Yeah.
safe, you know? But eventually those started to slow down, and it's like, okay, let's just take the runs a bit more seriously now. The main culprits for that 2.5 minutes as well. We've got Doom Skip, which is like 60 seconds. We've got Emu Warp, which is like 30 to 40 seconds, I think. Probably 30 seconds with outback movement. And then we've got 2-up skip, which was 14 seconds. Spire Swim, which is about 14 seconds. We've got Lawn Swim. Why did I bring that to the game? That one's terrible. 8 seconds for
Named
that.
after you too.
What was that?
It's also named after you too, which is the worst
Yeah,
part.
why? Why? It's like, of all of the skips, why did I insist that one was named after me? I had the worst skip in the game, named after me by myself. Regrets, dude.
Yep.
And then we have like double Thunder Egg on Bridge Over the River Ty. That's like 3 to 5 seconds. We also have Reverse Bridge and Grabless Reverse Bridge, which is also like 3 to 5 seconds. And then other massive time save was that walk reroute that Bra did. That saves like 15 seconds or so, because it's allowing you to completely task overlap doing the log Thunder Egg. So that saves a considerable amount of time. And then what else? A lot of setups and stuff were found, faster methods of doing things. The newer version of mill skip, where we do mill skip on the close side instead of the far side, that was found by BuzzChi and I when we were doing development for the practice mod for the game.
Mhm.
So essentially, BuzzChi was just flying around on a modded version of the game, like just gliding as like Ty would like slowly float into the air or something like that, and then he just bonked into the side of the mill and was able to stand, and he's like, "Oh, Lawrence, time save!" That kind of thing. And then we're just like yeeting ourselves at the side of this mountain or whatever, falling down the mountain a whole bunch, but eventually we managed to stick, and it's able to save like 5 seconds. Just this like tiny little adjustment, and
Mhm.
it gives you better reset efficiency on the skip. It's easier for most people. It has a really easy alternative method for beginners as well. Yeah, just all around, actually, it's made the game just more accessible as well. Like, every new runner that I've taught how to do the new mill skip has been like, oh, this skip isn't too bad, you know? Whereas everyone that was doing the old mill skip, like, there's a bit of a meme going around where Kaifal's like, I spent 150 hours practicing how to fling myself around the mountain on mill.
Mhm. He was telling me about that.
Yep, I can imagine. And now everyone's like, where'd that time go now, Kaifal? We don't use that side.
Yep.
Oh, man. Kaifal's a legend, though. He's a legend. But
Absolutely.
yeah, the improved reset efficiency on that is so much nicer.
I get you. We're talking about a lot of things here,
Mhm.
but I want to kind of touch on a few of them just in case we want to feature them a little more. I know
Yeah.
Doom Skip's a big one. Roughly when was that found?
So Doomskip, it was found on the day before the first sub 30. So let me just get you that date here. Obsoleted runs. Okay, I think this is the one here. Okay, so it would have been found on the 7th of December 2021 is when Doomskip would have been found.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of talk you through the story of how Doomskip was found here.
Sure.
So essentially, Brandorn, this was probably around the like middle to end of 2020, something like that. Brandorn was doing what he always does, and he was just finding random corners and things that he's able to mess around with. And he decided to throw Doomerang into this random little gap on the side of the giant mech at the end of the game. And the boomerang was able to go inside of the giant mech, kind of. So he's like, okay, let's just like fly around in here and see if there's anything funny that we can do, get on the backside of the robot or anything like that. And he was able to. And what's really interesting is if you throw the Doomerang at any other area on the rest of the game, your Doomerang will time out after about 10 to 15 seconds and it will just explode in the air. But for some reason, when you throw the Doomerang and it seems to like get behind this like certain like lateral axis or something like that, or you get through some sort of trigger, when you throw into the mech, you go through whatever this trigger is, and the Doomerang registers like it's inside of the pipe, the final pipe that we used to go for. This kind of like almost like the ending of Battle for Bikini Bottom or whatever. Ty came out first, by the way. We didn't copy it. But essentially, this giant pipe or whatever is located in the sky up above this mech, but behind it slightly. So when you clip inside of the mech, the game is like, okay, the Doomerang should stay active. It shouldn't disappear because this pipe labyrinth thing or whatever takes like 80 to 90 seconds to go through. So when you go through this entire thing, but you go into the sky, the game is thinking that you're inside of the pipes, but you're not. You've come in from the outside, and instead of starting like way off in the distance, up in the sky, you start from the bottom and you fly up, and it just so happens that the end of the game is literally the closest thing to the giant mech. So you just need to fly up, pull a quick Yui with your boomerang, and then fly in to the ending trigger of the game, basically. That's what happens now. The part that was a real struggle and eluded Brandorn and myself for an entire year is the fact that, okay, we're able to get up into the sky. We're able to have this untiming out Doomerang. But how do we get into the damn pipe? There's no gaps that we can see. And every gap that we can see, if we fly our boomerang into it, it explodes. And it takes like 30 or more seconds, like 30 to 60 seconds to fly your boomerang up there every single time. So it's like to brute force this was incredibly tedious. And that's part of the reason why it wasn't found for a year, because brute forcing it, if I'll be honest, like even knowing where Doomskip is now, if I was brute forcing it with being up top, with being down below instead of up top to brute force it, we probably wouldn't have found it yet. And we would have been more and more sure that it wasn't possible. But eventually, BuzzChi and I, we were developing stuff for the practice mod. Yet again, the number of time saves that have come from this practice mod, it's great.
I thought practice mods really helpful.
Yeah. It helps for finding time saves instead of letting you practice, forehead. But anyways, so we set up these teleporters. We're up on top of the pipe itself with Ty, running around on top of the pipe, and we're able to just throw boomerangs like every second instead of every 30 to 60 seconds, So the speed at which we can look for gaps in the pipe is so much better than it ever was previously, because we'd learned how to use all of these different modding tools and stuff like that by this point. And eventually, one day, I threw my Doomerang into something. I'm like, oh, I think I can see into the pipe there. So I threw nice and flat, and it was right at that section, right where the kind of two paths join back up. It was on the right side of that path, and I threw in there, and my camera got stuck. My camera was stuck, and my Doomerang didn't hit the wall for 3 or 4 seconds. I'm like, did I just go in? I'm like, nah, that didn't happen. So I went to bed, and the next day I was working on stuff with BuzzChi, and I was like, yo, BuzzChi, have you seen this? It's like, that's in, Lawrence. That's in. Let's look at this. And we were just working on the practice mod, and suddenly it's like, we don't care about what's happening on the practice mod right now. We're looking at Doomskip. And we managed to get inside of this pipe and managed to steer around with our camera being stuck outside of the pipe. Literally, you're doing this blind, and I'm trying to fly through the thing, and I'm like, yeah, we're in here for 7 or 8 seconds. This is definitely in the pipe. I think this is possible. But how is this mechanically possible as a player to fly through literally 50% of the Doomerang section? So at this point, it would have only been a 10-second time save because of how far back this was, while adding immense amounts of difficulty. So it's how's this going to be viable? And he's like, I guess we have to look closer to the end. It's like, but I haven't seen any other gaps this good. And it's like, oh well, we don't have a choice. So we go right near the end. BuzzChi finds 3 or 4 different spots that we'd never been able to find before, because whenever we'd been flying in, we'd been trying to fly direct at the pipe instead of flying very adjacent to the pipe and then clipping in between 2 layers. Kind of the way to think of it is imagine you have a mug or something like that, and then you've put a pipe inside of that mug or something. Pretty much there's 2 layers to it or whatever, and it's you need to get the Doomerang in between the 2 layers. And that's the way that you need to be able to enter in. And there was just a few of these little spots right near the end. They're 5 or 6 seconds back from the one that we use now. But essentially it's we found all of these different little spots, and it's we're I think we hit the final energy beam in the pipe a few times. BuzzChi was almost the first person to ever do a doom skip. But then one time when I was trying one of the ones that he'd found, I accidentally missed, and I fat fingered it, and I accidentally flew up and then flew down and had my Doomerang go way more in than I'd ever seen. And this was literally right at the very end of the pipe, right where it's supposed to go to the thicker section or whatever. And right there, I was like, BuzzChi, doom skip is real. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen tonight. It's gonna happen now. So I started throwing my boomerang, and unfortunately my hard drive space had completely filled up, so my recording had stopped. So unfortunately I don't have the exact moment.
Oh no.
But the irony, I don't have the exact moment, but essentially the Doomerang got in, and we're just screaming with joy, yes, it's real, we've done it. Brandorn's dream, our dream, is real. Sub 30 was real. Sub 30 wouldn't have happened until last week, when Karma got his 2850. It wouldn't have happened until then, basically. And that had a few other time saves and stuff like that on top of it as well. So Doomskip really made Sub 30 come in a lot sooner. But it was just that pure excitement, knowing that we had just found a 60-second time save. And the previous biggest time save that had been found before I started running the game, the previous one that was found, I think, was the route change. Well,
excluding gate skip.
Yeah, excluding gate skip and a few of the ground swimming things or whatever. There was slide 2 skip, which is a ground swimming thing. But outside of that, the actual previous innovation that came from that previous generation of runners, I think, was Kaifol, routing out the TA for Rex Marks or something like that. And this is literally going back 7 years onto 51 TE or something like that. 6 or 7 years back on the old console version of the game. That was the last time that something had been found that was over that 30-second mark, basically. So
crazy.
We were just in shock. And then what we decided to do, we were originally going to try and have Brandon on call when we were trying to get the doom skip for the first time, but then it came too quick. But yeah, the next day we scheduled it and we had Coral, Karma, Tinsel, and myself. We had all of us turn up and I showed everyone how to do Doomskip. BuzzChi and I were the only two people to have set eyes on it. I think I can't remember. Can't remember. I think I might have called Brandorn to show him the night before as well, because he was instrumental in it being found. And he was always pushing for it, saying, "Hey guys, Doomskip is real." And everyone was like, "Sure, Brandorn, sure, Brandorn." And I'm like, "Brandorn, I believe in you, buddy. We're gonna make it happen one day." And we did. But yeah, we scheduled a race and we had the top 4 runners. We all did a race at the same time, giving everyone equal opportunity, giving Karma the chance to defend his world record, and defend it he did on the first ever Doomskip run. Sub 30 happened. 29:55. It wouldn't have been a world record if it wasn't for Doomskip, because the number of resets that you got to do for that. But it's just incredible because it's like the impact of a single skip can literally just suddenly turn a run into a world record. And it's just that feeling of excitement and like shared progression of the game that is so encapsulating of just how I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it with other people and pushing the game forward.
Good. It's a good way to be, man. I love that too.
Mhm.
We are coming up at 53 minutes here. So is there any other thing that like, oh man, this video would not be complete if we didn't talk about this?
There's a whole bunch of other time saves.
I know there's a million time saves, and we don't have time to do that in this call right now.
I can rapid fire some of them.
Okay, just lightning round. Hit me with them.
So yeah, some of the other massive time saves that I've gotten to work on as well. Some of these have been on my own, some of these have been with other people. But there was Lawn Swim, worst skip in the game. Emu Warp, that was a really funny one. So essentially, on Outback Safari, if you talk to Shazza, it teleports you over to the area that you do the Emu minigame. And most times when you start a minigame, you're not able to cancel it and do another mission. But on this one, you can. So you can talk to Shazza, get teleported to the other side of the level, and just say, "No, I don't care about these emus." And you can start water towers instead. So that saves you this massive running section that has you running through like half of the level. So that saves like a good 30 seconds or something like that. That was the first really significant time save that I found. And there was one that I found on my own. And it was the first one that I got to see where it just absolutely smashed times down, which was really exciting. And then the next one was 2-up skip. That was it ended up being like a 13, 14 second time save, something like that. That was one that Brandorn had found ages ago. There's a running joke in the community that half of the skips that Lawrence ever finds are actually just setups for Brandorn. Things that he's found. So I found that one along with Tinsel. We basically figured out the exact angle that you need to be holding, how using like your walking mode and like the timing and stuff like that affects things. BuzzChi also added in a whole bunch more tech with like understanding how walking actually affects it when you're under the water. Somehow going into walking mode makes it so that you can get under the underwater terrain a lot easier for some reason. And then Spire Swim, I figured out the kind of like methods and understanding to make that one consistent. Karma refined it quite a bit though, and has the fastest setup now. But essentially understanding how tides affect seahorses and your ability to dive into things, I kind of like spearheaded that whole movement, which made Spire Swim into a regular and reliable strategy. And that saves about 14 seconds. Then I did a whole bunch of research on double thunder eggs, where basically we changed back to mid draw distance on the game to manipulate the distances at which Dennis gets unloaded on Bridge Over the River Ty, so that we're able to overlap 2 thunder eggs to get an animation cancel. That saves like 3 to 5 seconds because you're not needing to get this Fundrag in the middle of another mission that has Nettie walking around and doing weird things with his pathing.
Okay.
And then I think the final and most recent one that was found, this was a very long project for Brandon and I. It was the single rang route, where instead of starting with 2-up, we start by going to shipwrecks. And the way that this works is essentially I had to discover a setup for how to jump over the first gate using a bite, and also figuring out how to do it biteless as well. We're only able to do biteless on the way back, though, for some reason. The gate is like weirdly asymmetrical, so it's very hard to do on one of the sides. So had to figure that out. And then we had to figure out how to minimize all of the time losses on shipwrecks. So I think we actually managed to get it on shipwrecks so that we only lose like 2 seconds due to having a single rang. Previously, we were losing like 20 seconds, something like that. So I had to find, it was the ship to nest swim. Basically, this like really cool swim up a mountain that happens like a minute 30 into the run. That was a really satisfying one. And then figuring out the techniques of how to get across the coconuts without losing any time. That was also really difficult and only loses like 1/4 of a second now, which is incredible. You can't do any gliding as well, which makes it a little bit tense sometimes. And then what the point of all of this is, you're able to then enter 2-up with only adding like 2 seconds in Rainbow Cliffs movements or something like that, 2 seconds in ship. And then you're able to save like, what is it, like 12 seconds or more in 2-up. So you save 8 seconds by doing 2-up skip, but just by diving. So you don't need to do all of these like doggy paddling things. So you save a lot of time there. It's like 8 seconds. You save like half a second on your way to the first spy egg. And then you also get a ground swim after the 5th bilby. And then you get a ground swim on the time attack. So just like a whole bunch of little things that add up to saving quite a bit of time in the level, which ends up being when you do when you do biteless on the second fence or whatever, it ends up being like a 5 to 7 second reroute, something like that. And it also allows you to do shipwrecks first, which is the hardest level mechanically in the game. So we vastly improve our reset efficiency and we save time. But this is a route that only really makes sense if you're trying to go for sub 30 times, because the requirement and the extra strategies and the difficulty on things is just a lot higher for these. So it's like only a route that you should